Have you ever noticed that the more you try to find yourself, the more lost you become? That all the answers you seek out there only increase the emptiness inside? What if I told you that the person you're trying to become is already the biggest obstacle between you and who you really are? For years, we've been chasing an idealized version of ourselves. We wake up every day and put on carefully constructed masks, believing they are our true face. We create an identity from labels, achievements, possessions, and opinions. We say, I'm a lawyer, I'm a mother, I'm successful, I'm spiritual. We build houses of cards called me and defend their walls tooth and nail. But these castles are just sophisticated illusions, stories we tell ourselves until we believe they're real. Eastern philosophy has been teaching us for millennia that the ego is like a mirage in the desert. You run toward it, thirsty to find water, only to discover you are chasing reflections of light. Alan Watts brought this ancient wisdom to the modern West with crystal clarity. We spend our entire lives trying to strengthen something that never truly existed. The I you think you are is just a collection of memories, fears, desires, and social conditioning. It's a narrative your brain created to make sense of the chaos of existence. And you identify so much with this story that you forget it's just that, a story. Think about the most intense moments of your life. That instant when you were completely absorbed in a creative activity, or when you lost track of time talking with someone special, or when nature left you speechless. Where was the you in those moments? Where was that critical inner voice, that mental list of worries, that identity you carry like armor? The truth is, it disappeared. And paradoxically, these are the moments when you feel most alive, most authentic, most complete. Isn't that fascinating? The only moments when you truly feel like yourself are those when the you completely vanishes. It's as if consciousness needs to free itself from the prison of ego to finally breathe. Psychologists call this the flow state. Mystics call it temporary enlightenment. But the name doesn't matter. What matters is that we've all experienced this dissolution of self, and we all know deep down that it's in this emptiness that we find fullness. But why do we resist this so much? Why do we prefer to live trapped in a suffocating identity rather than allow ourselves to dissolve into the mystery of existence? Because we've been conditioned since childhood to believe we need to be someone. Society taught us that existing isn't enough, that you need to become something, achieve something, prove something. Your parents asked, what are you going to be when you grow up? Never. Who are you already? Education prepared you to play a role, not to discover your essence. And so you spent years building a life resume, accumulating titles, possessions, and relationships as if they were bricks of a solid identity. Except this solidity is a farce. You became a character in your own story, playing a role you didn't even consciously choose. If this idea has already touched something deep in you, if you've already felt this discomfort of living in a well-crafted lie, imagine what comes next. This journey will take you even deeper. Subscribe so you don't miss the next steps of this transformation. Now, let's go deeper. The greatest human fear isn't death, as many believe. It's the dissolution of identity. It's the loss of what you call me. When someone criticizes your work, you don't just feel intellectual discomfort. You feel as if you're being physically attacked. When a relationship ends, it's not just the person's company you lose. It's part of your identity that fades away because you had merged with that story. I'm her boyfriend, I'm married, I'm loved by this person. And when that ends, who are you? The existential crisis that follows isn't about loneliness. It's about not knowing who you are, without that external mirror reflecting back a version of yourself. We spend our entire lives outsourcing our identity. We need recognition from others to feel real. We seek validation in likes, compliments, promotions, relationships. It's as if we were begging for permission to exist. And the tragedy is that the more you cling to these external confirmations, the more fragile your sense of existence becomes. You transform into a ghost that only appears when illuminated by the spotlight of others' approval. But there's a radical and liberating alternative. What if, instead of strengthening your identity, you simply let it go? What if you stopped defending who you think you are and allowed this rigid structure to dissolve? Alan Watts used a powerful metaphor. You're like a wave trying to separate itself from the ocean. The wave says, I am me, I'm unique, I'm special, I'm separate. And indeed, each wave has its particular shape, its height, its force. But the wave is inseparable from the ocean. It was never really distinct. The wave is just the ocean expressing itself in motion. Similarly, you're not an entity separate from the totality of existence. Your universal consciousness manifesting through this particular configuration of body and mind. When you realize this, something extraordinary happens. The weight of being you simply falls away. You no longer need to defend imaginary borders. You don't need to prove anything, conquer anything, become anything. You're already the perfect expression of life happening now. Think about how we treat our thoughts. You believe you are your thoughts. When an idea arises in your mind, you automatically assume that's you thinking. But try observing for a moment. Where do your thoughts come from? Do you control them? Do you decide the next thought that will appear? Of course not. Thoughts simply arise, like clouds appearing in an empty sky. You're not their creator. You're the space where they appear. You're the screen where the movie of consciousness is projected. But through excessive identification, you started believing you're the character in the movie, and so you live trapped in the plot, when all along you could simply sit comfortably and watch the spectacle without getting lost in it. But there's an even deeper secret that few know. Losing yourself isn't a single event. It's not permanent enlightenment that you achieve and never lose again. It's a continuous process of dying and being reborn every instant. It takes courage to let yesterday's you die today. It takes tremendous trust in life to allow your certainties to dissolve, because when you lose your references, when your beliefs about who you are begin to crumble, a moment of existential terror arises. It's what mystics call the dark night of the soul. You feel yourself floating in a void without floor, without walls, without ceiling. There's nothing to hold on to. Your mind panics because it was trained to always have control, always have a narrative, always know who you are. But if you cross through that fear, if you allow yourself to fall into that void without resistance, something miraculous happens. You discover that emptiness isn't absence, it's fullness. You discover that when you stop trying to be someone, you finally begin to truly exist. It's like learning to swim. While you fight against the water, it drowns you. But when you relax and trust, it supports you. Existence works the same way. While you struggle to maintain your identity, to control your life, to be someone special, you sink into anxiety and suffering. But when you let go, when you trust the natural flow of life, you discover a freedom you never imagined possible. The great masters have always spoken about this in different ways, but pointing to the same moon. Buddha said that suffering comes from attachment to self. Jesus said you must lose your life to gain it. Lao Tzu wrote that he who knows he doesn't know is the wisest. They all realize that salvation, freedom, true peace don't come from building a better, stronger, more evolved self. They come from seeing through the illusion of self. It's not about self-destruction or denial of individuality. It's about recognizing that individuality is like a wave in the ocean, real in its manifestation, but not separate from the totality. You can play your unique role in the theater of existence without believing the character is who you really are. And here's the most surprising revelation of all. When you stop trying to find yourself, when you give up the obsessive search for self-knowledge, you discover you were never lost. The problem was never not knowing who you are. The problem was believing you were someone specific. You spent years looking for yourself as if you were a lost object, when all along you were the one searching. Like your eyes cannot see themselves directly, you cannot objectify your own consciousness. You're the eternal subject, never the object. And all suffering comes from trying to turn the subject into object, from trying to become something observable, measurable, definable. But pure consciousness cannot be captured, labeled, or possessed. It simply is. And when you realize this, not as an intellectual concept, but as a living experience, something in you is freed definitively. It's not that you find answers, it's that the questions lose their meaning. Who am I? Stops being an anguishing question and becomes a cosmic joke. You are that which is asking the question, always have been. So in the end, losing yourself isn't a tragedy to be avoided. It's the only door to true freedom. It's the most generous invitation life can offer you. Stop carrying the weight of being someone. Release the masks, the defenses, the elaborate stories about who you should be. Allow yourself to dissolve into mystery. Trust that when the false you disappears, what remains is infinitely vaster, truer, more alive than any identity you could construct. You don't need to find yourself. You need to stop losing yourself in the illusion that you were lost. The entire journey was an elaborate game consciousness was playing with itself, and now you can finally laugh, relax, and simply be. If this message touched something deep in you, if you felt these words were meant for you to hear today, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who's also tired of trying to fit into identities that no longer fit. Like this video, comment your experience, and subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of awakening. Because the most beautiful truth is this: when you stop trying to be special, you discover you were already extraordinary all along. You don't need to become anything. You just need to stop pretending to be what you never were.